I believe that music creates an emotional connection with the listener. Sad tones evoke sad emotions, and bright ones evoke happiness, but beyond that, the lyrics and songs themselves evoke an emotion all their own. Take this song by Jeffrey Lewis and the Junkyard, Broken, Broken, Broken Heart, a song whose lyrics vastly contradict its sound.
Now I'm falling in a hole, and it's dark and cold, and the only thing that I can do is try not to think of anything all night and day.
It's a sad song that's oddly upbeat, but lyrics can also evoke a connection, an emotional connection, and the band that I've found to consistently do this best is Seat Headrest. I'd like to focus on two albums, both of which attempt to be relatable but with varying levels of success. The first of these is Twin Fantasy. The album deals with real-world struggles of depression, homosexuality, anxiety on change, idealizing those you admire, and dealing with the disappointment that follows when you do that. It follows the story of a fumbling, awkward kid dealing with a strong desire for another man, and encompasses all the complications and thoughts that this forbidden love inspires. It brings a personal story to the struggles it highlights, and you can tell that the story is heavily based on the real life of frontman Will Toledo. The lyrics don't simply describe things. They don't just say, I struggled to come out. They say,
I pretended I was drunk when I came out to my friends. I never came out to my friends. We were all on Skype.
They don't generically say, I'm going to love you. They say,
Don't worry, you and me will be alone no more.
about 100 times, until the song breaks down to only plucked notes on a guitar.
We won't be alone no more. Don't worry.
We live in an era where music constantly tries to list off as many relatable factors as possible without developing them. But Twin Fantasy takes its time to look into each struggle it puts forth. It doesn't just pick the most accessible things to talk about, but the most personal ones. Will even takes the time to explain what he means by the term galvanistic at the end of the track, Nervous Young and Humans.
I use the term because I came across it in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and that book is sort of an exploration of the theme of creating a character, of making up a person.
He really wants the audience to understand what is going on in the head of this confused child as he comes to realize adult emotions. Of course, this is a work of art, so obviously he'll find a way to say his message creatively. Art always does that. But if you look at the band's most recent album, Teens of Denial, you get to see the opposite. In describing the album, Will points out the exact problem I see with the album's relatability.
Our upcoming album, Teens of Denial, which is very immediate and vital.
See, Seat Headrest is great at making music relatable, but they are a perfect example of a band that filled an album up with so much hashtag relatable stuff that it loses all meaning. Teens of Denial should be the band's best album to date. However, the coming-of-age story told in Teens of Denial fails in comparison to Twin Fantasy because it views the relatability as quantity over quality. The main way it does this is that the notions discussed in the lyrics are far more inclusive than, for example, depression caused by homosexuality. Instead, the first track, Fill in the Blank, is simply just about depression. It's about how people don't understand the illness, saying,
You have no right to be depressed. You haven't tried hard enough to like it. Haven't seen enough of this world yet, but it is.
Twin Fantasy, on the other hand, brings up an entirely different way of describing depression that personalizes the issue and adds something to the conversation.
I am almost completely soulless. I am incapable of being human. I am incapable of being inhuman. I am living uncontrollably. The anti-depression, as a friend of mine suggested, because it's not the sadness that hurts you, it's the brain's reaction against it. It's not enough to have the unreal. I am inseparable from the impossible. I want gravity to stop for me. I'm so young, but fugitive from the laws of nature. I want a cut scene. I want a cut from your face to my face. I want a cut. I want that extra lighted video.
Did you see what he just did there? He simultaneously appealed to people with depression because of how it talks about the not so often discussed feelings of depression, saying that it is not necessarily a sadness, but a torture of lost energy, seen by the line, "the brain's reaction against it." But also, it appeals to someone without depression by offering a better understanding of what living with the illness is actually like. The first and third stanza here describe depression through a stream of consciousness, which highlights the line, "I am living uncontrollably." It's not a complaint that no one understands the disease, like in fill in the blank. It's an attempt to solve the problem, to inform. And in that attempt to better describe it, the audience can further understand and relate to the issue. See, the relatability of Teens of Denial is just surface level. It complains about an issue that almost everyone knows about, but gives no insight into it. Another perfect example of this is my favorite song on the album, Drunk Drivers Killer Whales, because I do actually like the album. The song is literally about how it is bad to drive drunk, duh. But the more figurative reading is that it is about when the narrator of the song grows up, he feels more and more suppressed by society, and so he lashes out by doing boneheaded things just for the thrill of it, such as drunk driving, which, by the way, is a common thing that writers have pointed out for a long time now. However, there is no solution given to the issue. The song does not explain the possible motives for the issue, why we feel suppressed in the first place. The song does not personalize the issue, it just describes it. The only semblance of an argument is the chorus.
It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be like this.
I will say that the song does a great job of describing the issue, but the song is not relatable in the slightest, and it's not just because I personally don't drive drunk, because I can relate to the depression themes on Twin Fantasy without having depression. The problem is that it plays out entirely in the hypothetical. Will is describing someone else, talking to them, commanding them, but he never applies those issues to himself, and in doing so never makes them resonate. I've been doing some screenwriting recently, and one of the major things that people will tell you is that the protagonist of your story has to be a reflection of the audience. The audience has to see themselves in the protagonist's eyes in some way. Now, the easiest way to do this is by making the protagonist a reflection of yourself, because you're probably a pretty average guy, and this is what Twin Fantasy does. The much more difficult one is to create a character and then force relatability by trying to guess what the audience would do in that character's situation. In other words, exactly what Teens of Denial does. It can be pulled off with the right story, but oftentimes it doesn't even establish relatability and just leads to boring and predictable characters. Such is the case with Teens of Denial. The album establishes no connection with its audience, which indirectly makes the entire thing fall flat. So if you're a musician and you're trying to make a song that's not overly generic, maybe you should look into yourself, because you may just find something beautiful to write about.